Well, good morning, ladies. I am so excited to be here. We come in September for a board meeting and we hear about the preparation for the seminar, and we come again in November and we hear about what happened at the seminar. And I always say to my husband, I would love to come. But he's like, really? September, October, and November? And I'm like, okay, I know. And so then I think they must have gotten wind of that and said, well, if we ask her to speak, then she will come. So I'm excited to be here. It is a new adventure for me. My husband is the one who usually speaks on child training and relationships in the home, and he's very passionate about that. And so for me to put these principles into my own words when I'm usually busy taking notes is a little bit, it's new for me. So as I was preparing, there were so many things that went through my mind because I was asked so far in advance, and I just couldn't put everything into 45 minutes. And at first I thought, how am I going to fill 45 minutes? And now I'm like, I don't know if I can jam everything into 45 minutes. So I hope I can use my 45 minutes wisely. I'll introduce you to my family. We have 6 children, 5 girls, 1 boy. Our oldest daughter is Courtney, she's 24, and our second is Tamara, and she's 22. And both of them are here today, and I'm so glad that they could join me. And Tamara and her husband celebrated their first anniversary in August, and so she is the only one who has left the nest. So we are still a very busy household at home. Our son Kyle is 20, Amberly is 18, Serena 15, and Ava 11. And it feels like life is full and busy, and there's lots of adventure. And in our stage of life, the dinner conversation is lively, the laundry piles are constant, the schedules are almost unmanageable at times. And like Christine, I'm so thankful for the invention of the day planner. I sometimes ask myself if children make you old or keep you young. I've come to the conclusion that it depends on your mindset. And Christine talked about mindset already as well. But when it comes to our children and raising them, your mindset really makes a difference. So Psalms 127 verse 3 says, "Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord. The fruit of the womb is his reward." And verse 5 says, "Happy is the man who hath his quiver full of them." And when our family was still in the growing stages, my husband would say, that verse should say, "Happy is the man who has his van full of them." And I would say, honey, there are bigger vans out there. So we're going to go with the quiver. But in society today, when you introduce yourself and you say you have 6 children, there's quite a few people who look shocked. And you say, no, they're all ours, like ours. And one time we were visiting at a church, and I was speaking to a lady, and she asked me about our children, and she says, oh, well, then you have a good start on it. And I looked shocked. And I said, well, how many children do you have? And she said, well, she had 5 of one gender and 6 of the other. So no wonder she thought we were just getting started. But the most important part is not how many children you have. So if you only have 1, or if you have 11, or if you have any number in between, that's not what is important. It's important that we see that each child is given from God, and each child is a gift, and they're a special gift. Each child is different, but they're placed in your care for a purpose. Teaching and training is part of that purpose. It's incredibly important, though, that we value this gift properly. If we see this gift as something valuable, we will treat it differently than if we view it as an inconvenience. So if we go back to Psalms 127, verse 3, "Lo, children are an heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward." The word heritage means to have something given to us or passed on to us. If our children are given to us from the Lord, they are a gift, a good gift. Anything we get from the Lord is good. And after God finished creation, in Genesis 1:31, it says, "And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good." It wasn't just good, it was very good. We also need to see our children as God's very good creation. One child is not more valued in God's eyes than another, so it must be in our hearts and homes. Each child is of equal value and must be loved and treated equally. So, what do you value? Are your children your most precious possessions, or do you have stuff or self-image that hold you back from loving your children the way God wants you to love them? Today, if you are here and you are not a parent, please don't tune me out. There are children in your life who need you. There are many Bible verses that express Jesus' heart for children. He loved them and took time for them. He wasn't their parent, but he did love them. Possibly you have nieces and nephews or neighbor children who need an adult to show them God's love. I grew up with single aunts who played an important role in my childhood. They loved us in ways that our married aunts couldn't. I treasure those relationships. I also mentioned neighborhood children. There are many in the world who do not know love. Whether married or single, your home can be a place of love and safety for the children in your neighborhood. I don't have any grandchildren of my own, but I have several adopted grandchildren. Their grandma was a friend of our family, but was killed in a tragic vehicle accident before any of these precious babies were born. Taking time to hold them on my lap and read a story or serve a homemade snack is an important moment for these children. I think we're all familiar with the African proverb, "It takes a village to raise a child." And as much as I agree with this proverb, as I love and value the villagers that surround my family, I also see that some people almost completely rely on their village to raise their family. Daycare providers have been, and before and after school care, are in high demand. Most parents in the working environment spend very few hours with their toddlers that are waking hours. They give up the privilege to teach and train their own children, but instead choose to entertain them for the short time they have to try to make it a good time. Possibly there are childcare providers here today. I don't know. I would like to encourage you to treat this responsibility as a mission and not just a job. These children are so dear, and God has given you an awesome responsibility. The principles that I share today can be adapted for the teaching and training that you do as well. But if you're a parent today, God has given you a specific responsibility. Your children are to be your responsibility and priority. You are to be their primary caregiver, teacher, and trainer. While I was preparing this topic, I had the feeling of wishing I could do some things over. We know that we are only given the opportunities as they arise. We can't go back and redo any of them. But I'm so thankful that God's grace is available. I would like to give some credit to the book Shepherding a Child's Heart by Ted Tripp. It helped me so much with organizing my thoughts, and I would recommend this book to anyone who is involved with children. And it is available in the bookstore, and I believe there is on the shelf at the back there, it's labeled. So the first heading I have is Discipline with Grace. And the definition of discipline is the practice of training people to obey rules or a code of behavior, using punishment or correction or to correct disobedience. And the second definition is discipline is the self-control that is gained by requiring that rules or orders be obeyed, and the ability to keep working at something that is difficult. So I say the first definition is the act of training another, and the second is the act of practicing what you've been trained. And if we're going to discipline with grace, then the definition for grace is the power of God to do the will of God. So if we are going to discipline with grace, we need to believe that disciplining our children is the will of God and needs to be done in a God-honoring way. We also will believe that there is a valuable set of rules or code of behavior that needs to be followed. So the next heading is who I am determines how I discipline. And I don't know about you, but one of the most surprising things that God was teaching me as a parent is that I will be called to learn more about myself through teaching and training my children than I ever imagined. Over the last 25 years, our children have been instruments in God's hands. He has used them to show me pride, insecurity, selfishness, self-righteousness, and weakness. But I'm so grateful that God didn't leave me there. He not only showed me these ungodly character traits, but also gave me the opportunity to grow in humility, identity, selflessness, courage, strength, gratitude, and so much more. And even though God was growing me to become more like Him, it wasn't always easy. There were times I remember asking my husband, is parenting only for parents to learn? You know, you get that feeling like, oh, really? Am I the only one who's supposed to learn from this situation? I truly believe that God wanted me to learn valuable lessons about myself and about Him before He allowed my child to learn. 1 Peter 1:16 says, "Be ye holy, for I am holy." And if you want to fill in the blanks here, I'll try to slow it down a little bit. This is a call to reflect the character of God. It's a call away from sin to holy living. It's a call to purity and obedience. And it's a call to recognize that God is the authority that I must submit to. So I'll just read that again. It's a call to reflect the character of God. It's a call away from sin to holy living. It's a call to purity and obedience. It's a call to recognize that God is the authority that I must submit to. Remember, this is the call for us adults. God's holy character needs to be reflected in our lives. We must be focused on our holy God. When we get to know God personally and submit, the submission and obedience and purity come from a heart of love and worship. Let's ask ourselves a question. Is the way I discipline my children reflecting the character of God? So, what do you do when your child grabs a toy away from another? Or when your 4-year-old cuts off half of her ponytails? How do you respond when your children screams that they hate you or that they're going to run away to the neighbors? What do you do when your teen decides it's no longer important to follow household rules? Does God's character shine through? As a parent or caregiver, I should always act out of love and concern for my child. Never discipline a child out of anger, frustration, embarrassment, or peer pressure. These situations often turn out to be a reaction instead of an act of love and concern. It is so important that we display love and concern for our child when faced with situations that require discipline. If we are completely honest, we would have to admit that there are times when our humanness has taken the place of godly character, and we react to our children's behavior in a negative way. I don't know where this acrostic originates from, but it's in your handout today. But it displays the humanness that we as moms and caregivers sometimes feel. When we find ourselves in these situations, we need to be extra cautious and move forward. The main word is halt. And the definition of halt is to bring or come to an abrupt stop. So, H is for hurting, for physical pain. A is for angry or annoyed. L is for lonely. T is for tired. These are what I call times of alert. They are times when we are more apt to react. They are times when we need to rely heavily on God to help us respond properly. There are times when our body hurts. I went through a time where I suffered from extreme headaches in the morning. It's not easy to get up and at it when even a cloudy day is too bright, or the birds chirping are too loud. Or what about the ladies who suffer from severe sickness during pregnancy, or moms who have back pain, or disease such as cancer? Is godly character natural? What about A? We know that anger is not from God, but can we say that we have never been angry or annoyed? Another A word is agitated. We all know the feeling of being all stirred up inside. And L, lonely. Loneliness is real. There are ladies who are surrounded by people and still struggle with loneliness. You may have a husband and a house full of children, and still you experience loneliness. This kind of loneliness is emotional and spiritual. And the last is T for tired. And I'm guessing we don't need a description for that. Most moms know what that is. Moms are on call 24 hours a day and 7 days a week. And our physical bodies have limitations, and we need to be careful to pay attention to those limits. Physical weakness is also a great opportunity to display a God awareness and dependence. Give it over to God and ask him for strength. In 2 Corinthians 12:9, Jesus says, "My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." Can we say like Paul, "Most gladly will I glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me"? So what are my goals for my children? We live in a goal-driven world, and I think it's only fair that we ask personally what we want for our children. This will shape the what and the why behind discipline. If our goals are shaped by our culture, we will have a difficult time using godly principles to direct our children. Their accomplishments and failures will be weighed on a worldly balance instead of the scale of godly expectations. However, if our goal is to be used by God to direct our children to him and his will, then we will be under God's authority, and we will see the value of being a representative of God. And a little test question here, it's in your handout, is how would my child complete this question? What mom and dad want for me is, and how would your child fill in that blank? Would they say to be successful, to get good grades, be obedient, be popular, a hard worker, a skilled hunter, a good cook, to get married, to take over the family business, to be saved, be polite, good at sports, or a talented musician? The list could be long, but really what we want is for our children to say that I know that mom and dad just want me to know God and to have a life that brings glory to God. This must be our ultimate goal for our children. If everything we do is about knowing God and wanting our children to know God as well, then we will be willing to follow God's plan for our family, for relationships, and for disciplining our children. So why is discipline important? Discipline is designed to teach a child who God is and the blessing in knowing and obeying him. And if we were naturally inclined to know God and obey him, discipline wouldn't be necessary. But Psalms 51 says, "Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me." Ephesians 2:3 says, "We were by nature the children of wrath." And Romans 5:12 says, "Sin entered the world by one man, and death through sin. And so death spread to all men, because all have sinned." And lastly, in Proverbs 22:15 says, Folly is bound in the heart of a child. From the Bible, we clearly see that children enter the world with a sin nature. Therefore, if our goal is for our children to know God, we will need to show them God and his right way of living. Discipline teaches right from wrong. It also teaches the principle of sowing and reaping. Discipline is also an act of love. It is positive communication and correction designed to produce growth, not pain. The Bible clearly tells us that if God had left us to our own way, we wouldn't be able to live for his glory. He loves us so much that he draws us into close fellowship and lovingly chastens us to keep us there. Hebrews 12:6 says, "For whom the Lord loveth he chasteneth, and scourgeth every son whom he receiveth." And so it must be between us and our children. We need to draw our children into close relationship and lovingly chasten them. There's a big difference between discipline and punishment. Remember, discipline is an act of love. It is positive communication and correction designed to produce growth, not pain. Punishment is the infliction of a penalty as retribution for an offense. So basically, punishment is saying that you did this wrong, now you need to pay for it. It is only looking at the behavior. And there are two important aspects to discipline that we want to look at. And the one is communication, and the other is the rod. And they are meant to work together. So building communication with our children. Communication, I feel, is such a wonderful tool. You can reach into the heart and shape it and mold it. But it can also be used to cause hurt and pain. Positive communication is the art of expressing in godly ways what is in my heart and hearing completely and understanding what another thinks and feels. Is that the kind of communication that happens in your home, in your family? Are you able to express in godly ways and hear completely and understand? Positive communication should be a lifestyle in every Christian home. Building strong relationships between parents and children will require positive communication. It starts young and continues long after they leave home. One of my favorites is what I call relaxed or open communication. And I'm sure you all have these times in your home as well that you can think of that it happens naturally. In our home, I can count on open communication in the drives to and from school, mealtime, returning home after an event, or going for walks. I find walking and talking often go well together. This kind of open communication is generally lighthearted. It's a time of sharing the events of the day, often happenings from school, youth activities, or work. It's interesting to hear what is all going on in their individual lives. It's a great opportunity to ask questions and discuss answers in a relaxed atmosphere. My husband is a pro at asking questions. Our children often say that he can ask the same question 2 or 3 different ways. And in relaxed communication, you build relationships without friction. So our children will know that they will be asked what time they get home and what they were doing and with whom. And they are not being accused of anything. Their dad is simply showing loving interest in their lives. It also creates a naturally built-in accountability. If you only ask questions when things are going wrong or when you are concerned, it will be difficult for the child to be open. Positive communication also involves, and I have the list there in the book, encouragement, correction, rebuke, entreaty, instruction, warning, teaching, and prayer. Some forms are definitely used more often in different stages of child development. They can be used independently, but can also be linked together for a greater impact. Our children need encouragement. As parents, we can encourage them to be who God wants them to be. The difficulties they face are not smaller in their eyes than the ones that we face. They can feel overwhelmed with a task or disappointed with a failure. Knowing you care is important. If we link encouragement with prayer, we invite God's strength into the situation. Correction. When our children do wrong, they need to be corrected. It is important to show them where they failed and what can be done to correct the problem. Rebuke is an expression of sharp disapproval or criticism of someone because of their behavior or actions. Rebuke should always be followed by instruction, encouragement, and prayer. Entreaty. This term is not as familiar, but it's an earnest and intense communication, probably used with older children or teens. You might beg or plead them about the seriousness and the consequences of sinful actions. Instruction is the process of providing a lesson. So many lessons need to be learned. Step-by-step instruction is so helpful for a beginner. Sometimes we can forget that children don't know the things we think are simple. Take the time to instruct them properly. Warning. A warning faithfully alerts us to danger while there is still time to escape unharmed. If we are going to give a warning, we will need to be in touch with our children. Communicating ahead of time is so important. Finding out after the danger happened is too late. Teaching. The greatest teaching is example. If you first instruct, then demonstrate, it is much easier for the child to try and be successful. This is not only for the physical jobs, but also for the spiritual life. Prayer. Prayer is communication between us and God, or our child and God. If we listen to them pray, or they listen to us pray, so much can be learned about the heart. Recently, I overheard a dad tell his son to bow his head and be quiet. It kind of amused me. Did the boy know that he can talk to God in quietness, or did he simply just pause before eating his meal? God wants us to come to him. We need to teach our children how to come to God. It is also wise for the parent to make time to draw out your child into conversation when the child doesn't want to talk. This kind of communication is so important to understanding who your child is and what he or she is feeling inside. I'm sure we've all heard our children say that they're fine, but we know that deep down inside they aren't. One-on-one communication takes effort. Sometimes family life can make it difficult and seemingly impossible. There are some topics of discussion that simply need one-on-one time. It's important to take your child aside and find a private spot. Asking questions about feelings will help you determine how to direct your child to God. Sometimes privacy allows the child to express their heart because they know that their parent is trustworthy. It creates a safe place to be vulnerable. If we love them, we will want to help them understand that what is in the heart is seen by God. Also, what is in the heart comes out. Proverbs 4:23 says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." As parents, we can sometimes tend to focus on the issues of life. We see this behavior that shocks us. Communication looks past the behavior and unlocks what is in the heart. It asks, is it sin? Is it selfishness, idolatry, anger, pride, or foolishness that put this action into plain view? Sometimes taking time to communicate with our child helps us determine the difference between ignorance and sin. There are things that our children do that I would say are ignorance. They don't understand the result of their actions. The action isn't done with a rebellious spirit or out of spite or anger. So I'll tell you a little story that happened in our home. And I know you all know the feeling of, it's just a little too quiet. What is going on? And I had said earlier, but what do you do when your 4-year-old cuts her ponytails off? Well, I had gone looking for our daughter, and, here she came, and she was looking, suspiciously innocent, I call it. They know something's wrong, but they're trying to make it look innocent and quite obviously guilty. And her 2 ponytails that hung, just thick and silky down were cut in half. And not just in half, like half of the one ponytail and half of the other ponytail. And oh my, after some investigation, we found the chopped ponytails in my sewing trash can, and we retrieved them. And, it really made for good conversation about, number 1, what is the purpose of scissors? And number 2, what is God's special design for women with long hair? And so some of those things maybe we kind of overlook, and we don't take opportunities to teach and train our children, but these little happenings really give us an opportunity. So just grab a hold of those opportunities and teach our children, because there was nothing spiteful or angry about her. It was just, she was, I guess, being adventurous. So Proverbs 22:15 says, "Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him." And Mark 7:21 says, "For from within, out of the heart of man, proceed evil thoughts." Then there's a whole list of sins, and ending with the evil eye, blasphemy, pride, and foolishness. And verse 23 says, "All things come from within that defile a man." So you see, if we only correct the behavior and tell them never to do that again, the problems won't go away. It will be simple. It will simply be different actions as a result of the same sin in the heart. Communication also instructs the difference between sin and godliness. If a child can understand that selfishness is sin, along with anger, disobedience, and idolatry, they will sooner recognize the sin of the heart. It makes me think of the children fighting over a toy, and we've all seen it in our living rooms. And neither one of them is being kind or considerate. So who should have it? Often an adult comes along and settles it by saying, "Who had it first?" Is it right to condone selfishness? Wouldn't it be better to just remove the toy and talk about sharing and loving? Godliness is not optional when we love God and want to know Him. We need to take every opportunity to teach our children the what to do's and just not the what not to do's. There's a big difference. We give them tools to use when faced with feelings in their heart that ultimately lead to actions. And I had this little slogan here: love instead of hate, give instead of take. Those are not natural feelings for children nor for adults, unfortunately. Earlier I had mentioned there's 2 important aspects to discipline: communication and the rod. Well, I guess now it's time for the rod. The rod is meant to work alongside communication. And it's always been a wonder to me that when it's used properly, it produces closeness between parents and child. It proves to the child that the parent loves them. It also proves that the parent is under God's authority and is acting on behalf of God. It confirms in the child's mind that failure to obey mom and dad is actually failure to obey God. And I know this is not a popular teaching today, but it is still God's way and God's plan. The rod is to be used by the parent It's most successful when used by a loving parent who cares deeply for the well-being of the child. Proverbs 13:24 says, He that spareth his rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. And I just want you to notice the word son in that verse. Love for our children should resemble God's love for his children. Hebrews 12:6 says, For whom the Lord loveth, he chasteneth, and scourgeth every man who he receiveth. And again, the word son is used, and this time it's referring to us as God's children. And when we faithfully administer the use of the rod, we underscore the importance of obeying God to rescue the child from continuing his sin and produce righteousness. And this is a quote from Shepherding the Child's Heart. Hebrews 12:11 says, Now no chastening or discipline for the present seemeth to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterward it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby. And the rod is the parent's responsibility, but it isn't fun for the parent to spank the child. Neither is it fun for the child to receive the spank. That's why it says it is not joyous, but the end result is what is important. One time when my husband was explaining to one of our children that he must spank her because the Bible says it's his responsibility, and she looked at him and she says, I have read the whole Bible and it doesn't say that anywhere. And he said, you have missed a couple of verses. So there's a little bit more going on than what he was hoping for. Proverbs 13:24 says, He that spareth the rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chasteneth him betimes. And for some children, it seems as though the betimes is constant. For others, they respond quickly, and the use is less frequent. Unfortunately, there isn't a golden number given. Each child is different and responds differently. The importance is that love is displayed. Always spank in private. I believe that privacy is necessary for the respect of the child and for emotional release. A child should be allowed to cry after the spank, but they should not be allowed to scream out of control. You also need to comfort the child after the spank. Gently hold them on your lap. Tell them you love them and why you needed to discipline them. This comfort should always come from the parent who is doing the disciplining. The rod should never be abusive. It must be controlled and specifically applied to the child's bottom. There is a lot of value in asking the child to bend over your knee or lay on the bed. If they willingly do this, you know you have prepared them properly, especially when the child's understanding is more developed and they truly understand why they need the discipline. Now, just in the last couple of minutes here, I just want to encourage you to build meaningful relationships with your children. Spend time holding them, nurturing your toddlers. They grow up so fast. Take advantage of every teaching opportunity. Read valuable stories to them about Jesus and God's people. Ask your children, as your children develop, take interest in their lives. Encourage them to use their talents to honor God. Pay attention to what they are learning in school. And enjoy times of games and social interaction. Teach them how to worship their Creator. When they reach the teen years, discuss the challenges of life. Allow them to make decisions, but communicate with them the law of sowing and reaping. Their place of work will bring them its own set of issues to work through. Help them with difficult relationships. Sometimes the workplace exposes them to the hardness of this world and the reality of life not lived for Jesus. Our oldest daughter is a dental assistant, and she's been surprised by the medical reports that she sees that show the use of regular drug and alcohol use in her patients. This is the world we live in. There's a lot of really hurting people out there. Our second daughter is a funeral director. She too has been exposed to the hopelessness of families without God, and brokenness is all around us. We need to walk with them, pray for them, and direct them to God. Our child's vocation should also bring fulfillment and excitement. And our son, he enjoys some part-time sheep farming. And it's been a real enjoyment for us to learn along with him and join him in that. And we had the opportunity to bottle feed 2 little lambs this spring, and it was a lot of fun. And our girls had decided we should take them to school and show them to the little classes. And with his permission, we could take this lamb. So the day we were planning to, we had a snow day, and so we couldn't do it. And I said, you know what, let's take it to the dentist. The receptionist there is just so intrigued by this little lamb. And so we took it in there, and it was a real day brightener for her. And you see, when you get involved in your children's lives, your circle just broadens. And soon you have all these connections and opportunities that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So in closing, I just want to remind us, we don't know. We're not promised that our children will be here for us tomorrow. We're not promised that we will be here for our children tomorrow. Just take advantage of every opportunity that you have and direct your children to God and have a God focus in your home. Thank you.